The wildebeest is here.
Gold medal, let's go!
Back down the fly, just here recapping, predicting the World Junior Championship, U18 Women's World, the Men's World Championship, Women's World Championship, U18 Men's World Championship. What is happening?
It is by far one of the dumbest things I have ever seen.
Prepare to die. Figured it was better safe than sorry.
Scores! Nathan McKinnon! Scores for Canada.
Your home for international hockey. This is On the Fly. Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're recapping Day 3 of the Men's Under-18 World Championships happening in Bratislava and Trenčin, Slovakia. So hop into today, taking a look at the scores from today's game, starting with a 2-0 win for the USA over Denmark. Now in this game, it was definitely a game for the Americans that they can walk away somewhat happy with. Yes, the final score a lot closer than what they probably would have wanted, but you look at this game for this American team, and they really did just get goalied, luckily for them. And as we kind of talked a little bit about in their own team preview video, was the fact that although this game had the potential of having a goaltender game written all over it, we did still expect the U.S. to walk away because of the fact that they were going to dominate the pace of play and really kind of take it to this Danish team. And so, as much as, yes, the final score a lot tighter than probably what you would have wanted to see as a fan of the American team, this was the kind of game that I think the Americans, especially with the chances that they were able to generate, can definitely walk away happy with, although the final score, once again, not necessarily what they were hoping to see at the end of this one. They generated a lot of chances. They looked really good, especially in their game. Unfortunately for them, just couldn't quite get it past the red-hot goaltender today. And for the Danes, I mean, this was a perfect game from them as well, where you're going to keep it as tight as you possibly can for as long as you can. You think about this one, a 1-0 game for most of it. That's the exact style of hockey game that this Danish team needed to play today. Unfortunately, just couldn't get that one lucky bounce going their way to turn the tide in this game and all of a sudden get that one extra goal that could have pushed it to, say, an overtime where really anything can happen there. Unfortunately for the Danes today, just a little not enough in the end to end up losing this game 2-0 to the American team. They do pick up a big 3 points there. Then to the second game of the day between Finland and Latvia. And really, this was another type of game where I'd say very similarly to the U.S. game that we saw off the opening game of today. This game between Finland and Latvia was another defensive kind of marathon. This one a little bit more close as far as kind of general play structure went. We saw the Finns and the Latvians kind of have their own chances throughout this game. But in the end, it was a few key chances that really secured the final score for Finland, where they capitalized on their opportunities when they got them. And when you're going down against a team like Finland, especially as a team like Latvia, you have to try and kind of open yourself up. Disappointing result today for this Latvian team, but one that they can definitely walk away happy with, having the ability that they've shown now to themselves and to the rest of this tournament, that they're not going to be walkovers at this tournament. And kind of a reminder too as well, I'll add on, that they still have their two big games coming up. One's against Norway, one's against Slovakia. Those are their games that they were trying to win at this tournament, get themselves higher up in the seeds, give themselves an easier opponent down the line. And so what we saw today from this Latvian team is they are going to be a contending team at this tournament. Yes, they lose again today. They're coming off a tough loss against Canada the day before. But credit to this Latvian team for continuing to play within their structure. Still a pretty good game for them despite the final score. But for Finland today, they do pick up a big 3 points in the Group A standings with a 2-0 win over the Latvian team. We'll now shift over to the news. We'll start with the U.S. They did sneak by in today's games. Yes, they ended up playing extremely well. Yes, they ended up dominating the pace of play. But when you struggle to put the puck in the back of the net, it does cause a little bit of concern for them. We'll see what they can do going into a huge game tomorrow against the Swedes, where, once again, you're trying to play for seeding at this point in the tournament. You want to now, especially with the Slovaks beating Canada, there was a wrench in the standings over in Group A. The Czechs knocking off both Sweden and the U.S. tomorrow. We'll talk more about that game. But you look at those two, with those teams higher up in the standings, it's all going to come down to tomorrow. You want to make sure you're higher up, get to play the easier team, whether or not it be, whether it be the Slovaks, whether it be Canada, whether it be the Finns. The higher up you can place, the easier opponent should be going into the playoff rounds. And so for the U.S., They got to start getting it going. They snuck by today, but in the end, they do have to start kind of find their game going forward. Then to Denmark with the Wildebeest is back, and you think back to the Division 1A tournament, a dominant force at that term, Anton Emil Vilde Larsen, the goaltender for the Danes at this tournament. And that's the exact kind of expectation I'd say I had for him coming into this tournament. We've talked pretty extensively about him in our preview for this tournament, as well as our podcasts throughout the last little couple weeks, kind of in the lead up to this tournament. He was a guy that if the Danes wanted to be successful, he had to play a huge part. We saw him on the World Junior stage, this past World Junior tournament. He looked okay, but especially having to play up in age, we saw a little bit of that, I don't want to say kind of rust on him where he wasn't exactly to his best. This tournament in particular, we saw him kind of take it to that next level. And we've seen him both in their game against the Germans, of course, where they won, a huge win for them as they now avoid the relegation spot, most likely barring any kind of upsets there. Then, of course, their game today against the U.S., where he stopped 52 shots on 54 shots against. And so that is really where you need this goaltending situation to be for the Danes, is it has to be the strongest point of your team. You're going to limit quality chances as best you can, but especially when you play teams like the U.S., they are going to find those seams. And for the Danes, if they can play like that, continuing to go forward in this tournament, you look across the way, assuming they end up fourth in their spot over in Group B, their Group A matchup is likely going to end up being the Slovaks as of this point, barring, the Finns beating Slovakia, Canada then beating the Finns, and kind of those three-way tiebreaker scenarios favoring any other team but the Slovak squad. This is the perfect matchup for a hot goaltender to go into on home ice as well, increased pressure as well, and we'll see kind of if Anton Vilde can find his way through at this tournament. If he can, this Danish team has a chance to make a run at this tournament. You think as well to the Men's World Championships, where, of course, we just saw the Danes on the 2025 version, at least, knock off Canada at that tournament. This Danish team has the ability to do that as well at this year's tournament, barring the right matchup and with a little bit of added pressure with the Slovaks being on home ice. All of a sudden, that matchup could eventually resolve itself into something pretty special for this Danish team. But the goaltending has to be strong for the Danes. Vilde has been a huge part to this Danish team so far. We'll see if he can keep it going in through the rest of this tournament. Then we'll go to the Finns with another good quality game from them today. Unfortunately for them, just falling a little bit short of what they wanted as far as the final scores go. But they did put together a pretty good performance. It's always going to be a tough game going defense on defense with the Latvians. Luckily for the Finns, they still pull out the win in today's game. They play well enough to get the job done, but still, obviously, they would have liked to score by a little bit more. So the headline part, as much as, yes, you want to look at it and say, the 2-0 win was kind of an issue, you could say, out of this game. I do think you watch this game and you know that the Finns really took control of this game and didn't give the Latvians much hope through and through as this game went onward. For the Latvians, it's okay. And, you're going to this game against the Finns. It doesn't really matter how well you win this game, or if you win this game, or how you place in this game. You want to continue to build that momentum for those games that matter. And so when you look at it for the Latvians game against the Finns today, they wanted to do the small things right. And I think they did a really good job of that. They kept the Finns within bay. They had their opportunities. They almost scored on some of those opportunities. But in the end, the pucks just didn't bounce their way today. And that's just part of the beauty of it, is sometimes some games just aren't meant to be. And for the Latvians today, just kind of felt a little bit like that in that way. And so for Latvians, it is okay that they did end up not taking this game. But now it's kind of do or die time as they go in to their games that matter throughout the rest of this tournament. But with that, we'll now shift over to the standings. We'll start here in Group A. We'll see Slovakia in the top spot with 6 points, tied with the Finns. Canada in that third spot with 3 points. Latvia and Norway both tied in the last spot with 0 points with 2 regulation losses. Over in Group B, we'll have the Czechs in the top spot with 5 points. You have the USA in the second spot with 4 points. Sweden and Denmark both tied in that third and fourth spot with 3 points each. And then Germany in that last spot with 2 regulation losses. And so you look at this as far as just a reminder, the last two teams, or the last team in each both Group A and Group B, will be sent down to a relegation game playoff. Single game knockout, the loser sent down to the Division 1A tournament for next year. They will be replaced by Switzerland, who just won the Division 1A Men's Under-18 World Championships yesterday. And so we'll see, obviously, when they come back up, a force to be reckoned with, who had a bit of a disappointing tournament last year. We'll see what they can do at next year's tournament. But especially now, you kind of look at those standings. They're starting to space them out a little bit. Germany needs the wins against really a tough couple wins against both the US and the Czechs. Likely going to be a bit more of that struggle type of game. Are they going to be able to do it? Possibly. I'm not going to say they're not going to be able to do it, but it's going to be a pretty tough game for them to try and win really both of those games. They need 4 points to get themselves above the Danes going into that. So we'll see whether or not they're going to be able to do it. Likely not. They should be, barring any kind of crazy upsets at this tournament, the team going down to that relegation game playoff. On the other side, of course, you have the Slovaks, who've started this tournament extremely well. Finland as well, kind of those two teams kind of jumping the gun off the start. Canada is in a decent enough position right now. There is, and we are kind of trending towards that three-way tiebreaker type of tournament. And so we'll see kind of how that resolves itself. A big game, Finland, the Slovaks, as well as Canada, Finland. If Canada beats Finland, the Finns beat the Slovaks, all in regulation. Then it'll come down to kind of those goal differentials between the teams. And so that's where it could get a little bit more interesting for both Canada, Finland, and the Slovaks, because then we get down to how many does each team beat each other by. And then from there, the tiebreaker kind of resolves itself within that. And so for the Slovaks, only beating Canada by a goal might hurt them in the end, but still, obviously, more tournament to play. The Slovaks can definitely beat the Finns, and so we'll see if they can do that. And then the bottom half, as far as the relegation implications go, Latvia and Norway, two teams now kind of battling out for that last spot. The winner of their matchup very likely will end up going and going to the quarterfinal, staying up at this tournament guaranteed. The loser of their game going to be sent to that relegation playoff round matchup against most likely Germany. 1 game knockout. The loser sent down in Division 1A. The winner will stay up at this tournament for at least one more year. But I'll do it today for our standings, and I'll shift over to our games for tomorrow, starting on April 25th. We'll start here at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, where we'll see the Czechs taking on Germany. That's 12 noon Central European Time. 8 a.m. Eastern between Canada and Norway. Then we'll see the U.S. taking on Sweden at 10 a.m. Eastern. Finland and the Slovaks at 12 noon. And so a few really key games coming up tomorrow, starting with really the last two of the day, I'd say, although you can look kind of up and down these games and say each one has its own specific purpose. A reminder that if Germany loses in regulation tomorrow to the Czechs, which is relatively likely, they will be going to that relegation game at this tournament. So something to play for there in the opener. I'm expecting the Czechs to really walk all over the Germans in this one. If they can play like they have all tournament long, especially against the US and the Swedes, don't expect Germany to have much of a shot in this game. But if they take it a little bit easier, that's where we could see the Germans, especially if they can get out to that early kind of lead, that the Czechs could struggle a little bit there. Canada and Norway, very similarly, I'd expect Canada we've seen them bounce back in their game against Latvia yesterday. We'll see if they can keep that going throughout the rest of this tournament. A big game tomorrow against Norway, where it's another team that they should beat. Pressure's on them to try and get the job done. Not a lot of pressure for this Norwegian team. We'll see what the game brings tomorrow, 8 a.m., Canada and Norway. And then your two games of the day, Sweden and the US, 10 a.m. and 12 o'clock noon, Finland and Slovakia. Your first game here of the games of the day, USA and Sweden. This will be a really good matchup. Two teams kind of battling their way through here to try and earn that second spot now in Group B. They're trying to wait to see if the Czechs will make a mistake in this tournament, lose a game. Then all of a sudden the opportunity is still there for them to climb up into that top spot. But at the same time, unlikely they do that. The US, the Swedes, both teams fighting for that second spot. Gives them an easier matchup going into that quarterfinals, so they say. Whether or not it will end up working out that way, of course, time will be told there. But for both these teams, trying to win a game, a big kind of statement game as well, going into the playoff rounds where these two teams could very well see each other down the line in the playoffs, whether it be for a medal, whether it be for the semifinals. Definitely a game to keep an eye on here. Probably one of the best games we'll see in the prelims as far as talent goes. The Swedes coming into the tournament, kind of that first or second best team at this tournament. The U.S., a pretty confident third best team as far as the on-paper skill goes. Obviously, we've seen those rankings kind of get thrown out the window, especially as these tournaments have played through. But still, the U.S.-Sweden going to be a really good game tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern there. The other game of the day, Finland and the Slovaks, where we'll see whether or not the Slovaks can earn their way up and take the top spot in Group A. With the win regulation, they will clinch the top spot. And so we'll see once again whether or not they are going to be able to do that tomorrow. A big opportunity for them on home ice against a good Finnish team who's played relatively well through the start of this tournament, coming off of a bit of a kind of a game that you would have liked to see them win by more. But at the same time, they played pretty well structurally. We'll see if they can bring that into their game against the Slovaks tomorrow, which will prove to be a really good one. We'll see whether or not both these teams are going to be able to kind of find their groove against each other. I think especially for the Slovak team, look for them to get going early. If they can find some success early on in this game, look for them to try and run away with it. But if the game gets a little bit tighter, you see the Finns go up early, take the crowd out of it. Just remember, this is a home game for the Slovak team. It could prove to be definitely a difficult game going through for both these teams really, but especially for the Slovaks. We'll see which one can come out on top there. But your two games of the day for tomorrow, the USA taking on Sweden at 10 a.m., Finland taking on the Slovaks at 12 noon. As well, the other games of the day, Norway taking on Canada at 8 a.m., and the Czechs taking on Germany at 6 a.m. Eastern time. Should be a great day of action. That'll do it today for our scheduled content. We'll now flip over to viewer questions. We do put out a poll on our Twitter, X, and YouTube page asking for your thoughts and opinions on the day. We have one question today from Nick, the IIHF fan, who says, Anton Vilde, the future of Danish goaltending at the World Juniors and Men's World Championships? And it is a fair question. I think you look at this Danish team, and he's always kind of been that at the U18 level. We talked about a big reason why this Danish team was promoted to the top division for this year's tournament, obviously winning the Division 1A tournament last year. He played well at the World Juniors, unfortunately kind of fell himself on a short stick, having basically playing against a better team on each of their games that they played. And so this tournament for me was a really good opportunity to see him playing against guys his own age, whether or not he was going to be able to take it to that next level. I think he did a great job of it. And we saw that at least these first two games for the Danes, where he's been the focal point of this team. And we knew he would be, especially coming into this tournament, given his track record playing for the Danish national team. And then, as you asked, kind of, are we going to see him continue that going down the line into the Men's World Championships, which I think is another really interesting point, because you kind of look at the Danish goaltending situation and their goaltenders are somewhat starting to age out. We'll see, of course, whether or not that is going to become that kind of future as we do look down the line into the Men's World Championships. The Olympic Games as well could be very interesting. Of course, he has had a lot of success for the Danish national program on the underage side. Of course, whether or not he's going to be able to kind of, as he grows and develops as a player, of course, a big part of that as well, which we talked about, is could he be drafted at the end of this tournament? He's gotten a lot of attention through these first couple days, and if he can continue playing well at this tournament, there is the potential for him to be drafted into an NHL program, develop there, but at the same time, whether or not he does that, whether or not he goes over and plays in the local league, it's still definitely a question mark there, but we will definitely be tracking Anton Emil Vilde Larsson's career with some great interest, because he is a really good goaltender who's shown himself well on the international stage, and we tend to see clutch genes come out in some players, especially goaltenders, at these tournaments, which then transitions really well down the line for some of the smaller, quote-unquote, smaller hockey countries like Denmark, where we tend to see a lot of carryover from the U18 team to the World Junior team to the eventual Men's World Championship team, and especially for the European countries, the eventual Olympic Games over the last 12 years, where, of course, NHL players haven't been allowed back. And so that's where I think you could definitely see a guy like Vilde kind of continue that going forward. But still, a great tournament for him to start. We'll see if he's going to be able to keep it going. Some big games coming up for him. Obviously, they've already likely clinched that kind of quarterfinal spot We'll see who they end up playing. Some big games coming tomorrow to decide that top spot over in Group A, where we'll, of course, see the Finns taking on the Slovaks, as well as another big game over in Group B with Sweden taking on the US. Of course, we'll break it all down tomorrow and more. But if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Please drop a like. If you're really sure, subscribing. Tell all your friends. Comment down below your thoughts on day 3 of the men's under 18 World Championships. Until next time, see ya.